Welcome to the February 7th meeting of the Mobile City Planning Commission. I'd like to take a moment to review our general operating procedures. Our meeting is divided into two sessions, the public hearing session and the deliberation session. In the public hearing session, an application or a group application on the agenda is called. The applicant makes his or her presentation. Commission members ask questions, if any, and members of the public make their comments. Only four people may speak for an agenda item and 4 against. Each speaker is limited to 5 minutes, subject to questions by the commission. After 4 minutes, a loud beep will indicate 1 minute left to speak, and at this point, please summarize your comments. After all opposition speakers have finished, the applicant will be given time to respond. If you do intend to speak, please come to the podium, speak into the microphone, and give your name and address for our minutes. Please direct all comments to the commission only and not to the applicant or the audience. And please remember to speak directly into the microphone. On routine applications, the applicant may simply raise his or her hand if there are no objections to the staff recommendations. I will then announce that the applicant is in full agreement with those recommendations. If there are any questions, the applicant will be given an opportunity to respond. After hearing all applications, the commission will go into the deliberation session. In the deliberation session, the commissioners discuss each application with input from the staff as necessary, but with no input from the audience. The commissioners then vote on each application. Results of the voting can be learned from the planning department. If some issues arise in the deliberation session that were not addressed in the public hearing, the chairman has the discretion either to allow additional comments pertaining to those issues in order to resolve them, or to call for the application to be held over for discussion at a future meeting. Occasionally, one or more commission members may recuse themselves from discussing and voting on a given application. A recusal does not necessarily mean the member is directly involved with the application or the applicant. Depending on the circumstances, ethical rules may require a recusal when there is only the slightest appearance of a conflict of interest. If a regular member recuses, a supernumerary will vote in their stead, unless both supernumerary are already voting due to absences. The Planning Commission makes final decisions subject to appeal on subdivisions, planning approvals, and planned unit developments. The Planning Commission only makes recommendations on zoning applications, with the City Council making the final decisions. Please turn off all cell phones at this time. Commissioners and staff, please remember to turn on your microphones when speaking. I will now call roll. I'm Libba Latham, Jennifer Denson, here. John Vallis, here. Shirley Sessions, here. Alan Cameron, here. Matt Anderson, here. Nick Amberger, Bess Rich, here. Don Hembry, here. That's everybody. We will get started. Application number 1 is 3800 Scenic Drive, Riverview Subdivision, re-subdivision of Lot 13 and replat of Lot 1. The applicant has indicated he is in agreement with the recommendations. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to it? Thank you. Number 2, 136 Country Club Road. It's been recommended for tentative approval with the applicant present, and he has indicated he is in agreement with all recommendations. Is anyone here to speak in favor of this application? Is anyone here to speak in opposition to it? There is no opposition. Number 3, 2050 Conception Street Road. It's recommended for tentative approval.
Hey, good afternoon. Tri-Stabler with Maynard Cooper and Gale. Address is 11 North Water Street, Suite 24290, Mobile, Alabama 36602. We had a couple of comments and maybe requests about the conditions to approval. One of which relates to items or conditions 2, 3, and 4. And the width of the dedication of 50 feet. And our request would be, in lieu of the 50-foot dedication, that we have an additional 25 feet of setback at Conception Street Road rather than the full taking of the extra 25 feet. I think as the property is currently used, I think there's fencing and some use of that portion of the property, and also I think that if you look at sort of the natural flow of that roadway and the way that the properties are developed on the opposite side of Conception Street Road, it would appear that in the event that the road is ultimately widened in accordance with the street plan, looks like the natural location of the construction of that road would be on the opposite side, which we would obviously be willing not to develop in that 50 feet, but our hope would be to prevent the extra dedication or vacation of that roadway portion and instead have a larger setback.
Mr. Stabler, you're asking for item number 3 to be changed from 25 feet to 50 feet?
So we would ask that item 2 be deleted and that item 3, especially as it relates to the northern portion of Conception Street Road, be changed from 25 feet to 50, and the 25 feet would remain for the relocated Bay Bridge Road and the Canadian National Railroad right-of-way. So the extended setback would apply only to Conception Street Road.
Okay.
And then item 4 would also be revised, assuming that the committee was agreeable to change the reference to 25 feet to 50 there as well.
Okay.
And then the next comment that I have relates to engineering comments 7F. And there is, of course, McGowan Avenue runs the length of, from Conception Street Road back to the railroad track. And a portion of it should be vacated. And so if you see on the detailed site plan, there's an easement coming off of Bay Bridge Road, and then there is a sort of a gap where McGowan Road would cross, and then it picks up again at that 10-foot easement mark that's showing on that site plan. And I think what is being referenced here is that gap. There is existing drainage and existing piping. And so my understanding is that our plat needs to reflect, in essence, a complete easement there that can connect those two. And the concern from our perspective is we wanted to make sure that there was not, a reference that our plat needed to indicate some form of easement along the length of McGowan Avenue from Conception Street Road all the way to the rear of the property. And I don't think that was the intent. And so our request would be to reword where it states the existing McGowan Avenue right-of-way, and to reword that to state something to the extent of, the northern end of the vacated portion of the McGowan Avenue right-of-way, just so there wasn't any confusion that, our plat needed to provide for some easement, along the length of McGowan Avenue. And I don't know if it may just be me reading it and sort of being extra precautionary, but I just didn't want there to be, any issue where ultimately our Lot 1 would be subdivided by a public easement.
So are you saying the northern end of McGowan, is that a vacated right-of-way?
Correct. So a portion, about half of McGowan Avenue, and I think it shows on one of the other maps. Yeah, there. So you can see where the back half, starting at about the C of McGowan Avenue to the rear of the property towards the railroad track, was previously vacated. And so the easement that went or the drainage that goes underneath McGowan Avenue toward the back of that property I believe is what they're referring to in 7F, as opposed to some easements that would run along the unvacated portion, if you will, that starts at Conception Street Road.
Can we get engineering to clarify?
Yeah, well, hopefully we can clarify something that we can take care of. Yeah, part of McGowan Avenue right-of-way was vacated and part of it's still open. Our GIS shows some drainage structures located in that existing right-of-way that look like they drain south to Conception Street Road. So and also again, our GIS indicates that there's drainage coming off of New Bay Bridge Road that ties into that system and drains down to the south. So if that's the case, we just need to make sure that any public drainage that's existing either gets relocated on site or it stays in an easement. And I think we can probably reword this to say that any existing public drainage structures will need to be located inside of a public drainage easement. And that'd probably cover all of the options.
Whose responsibility would that be?
I'm sorry?
Whose responsibility would be to change it?
To change the
Say there are drainage that's functioning here now in that still opened right of way. So
Right.
if you're saying that you want drainage to be in an easement, would it be the choice of the who's developing this to move it to a right of way? Engineering
yes,
approval?
Yes, they'll have the option to move any existing drainage features somewhere that of course engineering would approve to maintain
And that would
the
not
flow
be a
that way.
city program, it would be the developers?
Yes, it would. Yeah.
They could only move it to a place where the engineer agrees.
Right.
It'd be an expensive
Well,
development.
yeah, no, that's what I'm trying to make sure we word this right so that it's not something that the city has to come and remove the public drainage off of what is vacated, if that's what's going to be recommended.
Yeah, it would be up to the developer to either provide an easement on the existing pipes, because I think what they're proposing is to vacate the rest of McGowan Avenue anyway, isn't that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah. So when they do that, if those are public drainage pipes, they either need to remain there and stay in an easement, so they'll have to dedicate an easement around those pipes when the right-of-way gets vacated, or, well, I'm sorry. When they vacate the right-of-way, that's what they'll have to do. When they come back and they want to develop that property and they want to, put a building where those lines are, well, then they'll have to relocate those lines and provide
I
additional
wouldn't want
easements as necessary.
that owner to think that
Yes.
that was an obligation of the city.
Yes, yes.
And our concern is obviously having an easement that restricts the ability to develop it at a later date. And I think the developer would certainly acknowledge that any drainage is going to have to be engineered and dealt with, at the time whenever they determine a
I mean,
future
it's
use of the
stated
site.
in the, under F. So to me, it sounds like it's accomplishing what you're trying to accomplish, but maybe we just need to specify the northern end of the existing McGowan Avenue right away.
I would suggest us leaving it the way it is.
Right.
And it'll leave it open for us when they come in with their final plat. If, we'll make sure, verify which pipes are public and which are private and which ones we need to maintain easements for and get that straightened out then.
Right.
And doesn't that language that says to be worked out with in compliance with the city engineer and approved by, doesn't that cover that? The language that's already in there?
Yes.
It covers what might happen down the line.
It should cover all of, yeah, it should cover that. We'll be able to review it before we sign the plat.
And that makes sense to me. I guess the confusion on my part was the belief that any drainage structures was in fact referring to something up along those existing easements and not something in the unvacated portion of the right-of-way. And if that is the concern, then obviously we would need to deal with that. And certainly we'll work with the engineering department when we present our plat to make sure it's resolved to their satisfaction.
Thank you, Mr. Stabler. Is that everything?
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to it? Thank you. We'll move on to number 4. Planned unit development application for 441 and 457 Dolphin Island Parkway. Is the applicant present? The applicant is present, and you're in agreement with all the recommendations? And has indicated agreement with the recommendations. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to it? Thank you. We will move on to number 5. Planned unit development, 5721 and 5723 US Highway 90 West. Is the applicant present and in agreement with the recommendations? Is there anyone here to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to it? Thank you. We will move into our deliberation phase. Number 1, 3800 Scenic Drive, Riverview subdivision.
Move for approval, subject to staff recommendations.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Number 2, 136 Country Road.
Move to approve based on staff recommendations.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Number 3, 2050 Conception Street Road.
Move to approve based on staff recommendations, deleting item number 2, and then changing item number 3, retention of change 25 to 50-foot minimum setback along the northern portion of Conception Street, then adding a 25-foot minimum building setback along Bay Bridge Road and the railroad side. And then changing number 4 to illustrate a 50-foot minimum setback along Conception Road.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Number 4, 451 and 457 Dolphin Parkway.
Move to approve based on staff recommendations. With findings of the facts are A through, am I on the right one? Okay, number 4, finding of facts is A, C, and F. Thank you.
Second.
Thank you.
Is there any discussion? Properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Number 5, 5721 and 5723 US Highway 90 West.
Move to approve based on staff recommendations and findings of facts A, B, C, and F.
Excuse me, Mr. Henry, I don't have an F on mine.
It's just A through D.
A, B, C, and F. I've got F.
I have a D.
Is that fine?
Well, maybe this F is supposed to be a D, so, because mine shows an F, but A, B, C, and D.
Properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you very much. Is there any further business, Ms. Pappas? Anyone else?
In the book is F.
This meeting is adjourned.
Is this draft for us to take with us? Just like our homework?
Yes, you have a little homework in front of you, 300 pages, leisurely reading. Those are draft copies of the Unified Development Code. Just to remind commission and citizens that may be listening, we're in the informal period of public review. We have opened up our mapformobile.org portal where we're encouraging citizens to give us feedback. So we wanted the commission members to have hard copies of the code to review. That period of review will end March 8th, and then staff will be processing and evaluating all we've heard the last several weeks. And then we'll be coming back to the commission with more details.
One more question before we leave. I'd asked Bert earlier about, I don't think we ever elected officers for 2019, so you might want to consider taking that up at some point in time. Point of order, there you go. No.
This is the same.
I recommend we leave it just like it is.
Yes, I can leave this.
Yes, if you have a copy, it's flowing through my budget trying to print these things, but if you already have a copy, if you'll leave it, because we have some other members that we need to make sure we get their copies too. But otherwise, please feel free to take them.
I can leave mine. It's my bedtime reading. Oh, I swear to God.
I'm sure you will.
That's